Hello, welcome to Sky Sweaty Record Review, episode 194. The only first listen new music review show hosted by a French professor immediately after leaving the YMCA. You see my scary mask? It's an Indonesian mask. I used to have it on my wall. My wife really wants it out of the bedroom, so I'm using this occasion to wear it once and then put it away forever. And I did that on purpose to scare you, because I'm going to be reviewing an album which is basically a horror album. And at times, I would call it horrorcore. I'll explain more in a second. So the name of the album is There Existed an Addiction to Blood by the band Clipping, period. I mean, it's like the word clipping and then like a dot after it. And, this is an interesting group. It's like a trio, 3 guys, and one of them is a rapper. And it's funny because I did a little bit of research and I found out that it was the guy who played Lafayette in Hamilton. And a friend of mine is visiting, and I just mentioned this in passing. And she's like, oh, Devon Diggs or someone Diggs, I don't know what. And then he also was in this movie and that, and he totally saved the original Broadway cast. And she's like an expert on this guy. So I guess he's a pretty big deal. And I must say he's a pretty good rapper. You can tell that right off the bat with the first track, which is an intro. He's very technically proficient. At times, I don't always like that when people can rap really quickly and really well. I can feel a little bit lacking grace. But in general, he doesn't do too much of it. Like, he has a fair amount of limberness where he moves from style to style. I'll get more into that in a second. In general, the music is very computer generated. Like, it seems like it must be the 2 other guys who are working on synthesizers and keyboards and computer production and making something that's really quite lush, very layered at times, and really it's a strong horror soundscape. Now there's a plane flying overhead, which if I were a real video maker, I would edit out. But I actually had to take off the mask because Toby, my dog, was up there and he was howling from the window because it scared him so bad. Nobody likes this mask. What is so scary about this? So it's interesting because even when I started listening to this, before I knew it was by a guy who was in Hamilton, I sort of said it's what I call hip-hop but, which is music where people go, I don't like hip-hop, but, because it felt very different. It doesn't really feel like a standard hip-hop album, but if you go back to my review a couple days ago where I talk about the importance of alternative hip-hop, my general theory is that the strength of any musical form exists as long as there's a strong mainstream and an equally strong alternative. So that's what's so great about hip-hop, is the mainstream keeps changing, and so do the alternatives. And this is definitely an interesting alternative. The closest thing I would say is that it's like horrorcore. So if you're familiar with that, there was like this strain of rap, which I couldn't listen to. I hated it, to be honest. Where people just sort of rap about like killing people and murdering, especially women, but just murder and blood, and I'm a little bit squeamish, so I wasn't really into it. And so this record kind of flirts with that. But let me get back to it a little bit track by track. First of all, I will say I really liked this album. I liked it quite a bit, especially here in October, Halloween. You could do a lot worse than listen to this. I think this might be a Halloween staple. The opening track after intro is Nothing Is Safe, and that's where it seems that it goes, in the beginning, I couldn't tell how horrorcore it was and how much it was just kind of a dark landscape, kind of a dark thematics. Because this is a lot about death and it has this kind of ominous keyboard. And it's almost emo, the way it's singing about death. And then it ends with these interesting bark sounds. It's a very, very well produced, interestingly produced record. The next track might be my favorite. I'm not going to play it for you because I don't think it would come through. It's a headphone song. It's called He Dead, where you have a guy named Balloon Man, Mr. Balloon, Ed Balloon, I don't know, singing along. And he just sings this sort of almost like a house-style chorus. And then the guy raps underneath it. And it's great because it's sort of like it has this like, the soundscape is like this gasping breath at the beginning, and it's very dark, and there's sort of like this horror organ at the end, and it kind of keeps going, and the foreboding keeps getting more and more foreboding as the record goes. The next track is La Mala Ordina, and that's the first time I actually typed in here, this is horror rap. It seems to be about a serial killer, and kind of grimy and distorted, but at the same time, another airplane, at the same time there's these sort of, it seems like it's about, you know, serial killers, but then at times it seems to be about like, you know, crime and drug dealing, and it's hard to figure out exactly where the line is between like, is this about gangster rap? Is this about horror? What is it really about? And this is a first listen new music review show, so I don't really have time to figure it out. I will give it credit for raising the question. Then an amazing track, Club Down. It's like almost a banger. Like if I told you there's a song that's all about the club shutting down, you'd think, all right, here we go, let's get the club track going. But the way it's produced, it doesn't really work that way. I mean, it's like singing all about this like dude with a like vomit on his beard. It's like, ugh. And it seems to be one of many songs on the record that are sort of from the perspective of a serial killer. But this is what I'd like you to do. If you're interested in interesting, Jesus Christ, I use that word so much. I use that word more than there are airplanes flying overhead. But if you are fascinated by well-constructed and different sounding rap styles, listen to the track Club Down, because this guy, I forget his name already, Diggs? Something like that, Lafayette. He like raps slow in the beginning, and then after the first chorus, he like speeds up and does his more technical style hip hop. And I'm not really used to experiencing that kind of dynamism with rappers who can do this sort of da-da-da-da-da-da. And this one, it's very intellectual. I mean, it's pretty clear that this is an educated rap band, and that's maybe part of the alternative, you know. No one here is trying to sound street. Right? They're not really trying to sound anything. Like they're making a lot of interesting references. There's a certain level of intellectual power to this album. Run for Your Life taught me that this record is masterfully produced. It's really, it's crazy because there's all these, it's like sounds of like gunshots, but super muffled, and that's basically the rhythm. And there's like sounds of dogs barking, and you think that's the rhythm. But every time you think there's going to be a rhythm going, they like push it down in the mix, and the vocals are just so loud. They're just so loud. And it's all about like running, like you have to keep running, and whoever stops running is a ghost. And it's this really ominous, just dark, dark feeling. Even one point, there's like these chimes or almost like the sounds of, it's like buses going in the background. It's this like urban war-torn hellscape. And you think this kind of like repeated diddle-diddle-diddle might become the rhythm, but then they take it away. Finally, they actually do bring in some actual beats as someone named Lachat comes in and does kind of a serial killer scary verse, but really it's the first half of the track that's just great. Just these words are just really important, and really it's a testament to the ability that good rap music or good rappers have to set the beat with their words. Like this guy doesn't need a click track, he is the click track. He doesn't need a beat, his words are the beat. It's really quite good. Then there's what I call the turn. This is where the record goes a little too much this. The track, The Show, is basically a straight up, you know, horror, Hannibal Lecter, Dexter scene where, can I like put this here so that you can see it and it's scary in the background? No? No, I can't. Okay, that's scary enough. It's like a horror show, you know, like I'm cutting off your arms and what can I fit in your orifices, and it's like a torture-y, blood everywhere. I had to skip it. It kind of lost me, and I sort of had the feeling that the record was going this way. Fortunately, it didn't, but I would say that at this point in the record, it becomes more horrorcore than horror atmosphere. And I think it loses something there. But at all times, this sort of horrorcore remains something vaguely political. As an example, the track All in Your Head has this female rapper, and she's sort of like rapping the tropes of pimp rapping, you know, hose down, whatever up, whatever that is, you know, like all rapping about the way of manipulating and hurting women into being prostitutes and making you money. But it's done very clearly ironically. So it's trying to say the opposite, in case you don't know what ironical means. And it's good because, you know, she says some line, you know, like, we still owe you for that rib. So it's like a real feminist statement, but it's drenched in this horror and darkness that permeates the record. Kind of like the light on this video. I'm super backlit. But actually, that friend of mine is in there. I don't want to disturb her because, anyways, I'm going to talk more about Lafayette and about Hamilton. She's like, what do you think of Hamilton? I don't know. I think I liked it. No, I did like it. Anyways, musicals, whole nother discussion. And then we get to the track that is basically the thesis statement. It's called Blood of the Fang. Now, this is apparently like a sample. There's a sample here from some 70s horror movie about like African vampires. And in general, like, I've talked about this album having a horror movie feel. I mean, they have all these interludes that are like super spooky. They have one called, what's it called? The Haunting, that's just like someone describing being haunted. Another one called The Possession. And it really feels like you're listening to a scary album. But this track really feels like the thesis because it's talking about this need to drink blood. But there's something that they're doing here that's not just drink blood. Like, he makes reference to someone having to drink syrup because they couldn't drink their own blood. So there's something else happening here. There's an extra layer, which, to be honest, I don't fully understand. That can mean two things. One, they're not expressing it well. The other, they're expressing it very well, and I just need more time to process it, but I don't do that because this is a first listen new music review show. Hosted by somebody in a Indonesian horror mask. So I'm going to play you a little bit of this because it's a great example of the album. It's gross. It's about drinking blood. I don't really like it. It's kind of scary. It's really well done. It's very well produced. One second, let me just get my computer here. And I think it's a really good example of what this album is and what I like about it and what I didn't always like about it. So I'm going to play you a little bit of Blood of the Fang off of the album. What is the album? There Existed an Addiction to Blood by Clipping. If it loads, it'll load. Come on, load, buddy. Oh, no, come on. It's going to load. We're good. Wait, is the volume down? Well, I'm going to have to edit this out.
There existed an addiction to blood.
Drink it up. 50 years about enough. Time to come back. They wanna call the bluff. Okay then, time to come back. What up? Hail King Huey, do it for fluid, you knew it was moving forever. Loop it, the truth is the movement was really too clever. Who is the newest to do it, pursuing a useless, polluted agenda? Too long to get they bullshit together. 50 years about enough. Patient, gave him a 2-year grace. 6-6 came, then they saw the true face. Black on black.
So that gives a good example of the sound, you know, the pulsing keyboards, blood, 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 this whole theme, like, sip it up, drink it up. So that's what the whole album is really quite like. There's another track called Cynthia, which is another serial killer song, but it's like a story about like a woman who kills men in sexual situations, and it's quite nice. I'm not going to spoil it. It's the catchiest song on the record. And then the last track, sort of note, is Attunement. That's basically like Death is Fine. So there you go. There's my review. I don't know what my 3-word review is going to be. I mean, you know, it's really well produced. Horror record that it sometimes is horrorcore. Scary, good. I don't know. Who knows what I'll say? It doesn't matter. For Toby upstairs who's barking, for my Indonesian horror mask, I don't even know what this is supposed to be. This is terrible. And for my wife, who'll be happy to see this go to the basement forever, blood. There's the camera.